So I just shot a full documentary on the Nikon ZR, and honestly this camera is kind of confusing. On paper it actually sounds insane. You've got a bunch of internal RAW codecs, including an impressive red RAW. It's got a big beautiful screen, 32-bit float audio, all for a cheap price of around $2,000. But how does it actually perform on a real shoot? Because Nikon definitely made some odd choices with the ZR. So in this video I want to share my experience with the Nikon ZR, not only on this documentary shoot, but also as a more casual camera during a recent city trip. I'll talk about what impressed me, what frustrated me, and we'll figure out whether the Nikon ZR is actually ready for professional work. Let's get into it. Now, real quick before we get into anything else, let me run you through the lenses I used, because lenses do play a big part in the overall look of an image, so I think it's important knowing up front. The documentary was shot entirely on the Siri Ironstar anamorphics, and the Strasbourg city trip footage was shot on the Nikon 35mm f1.4 and the Nikon 24-70 f2.8. The Ironstars have a 1.5x squeeze factor, which gives you a more subtle anamorphic look. It's enough to give the image a slight cinematic anamorphic character without it feeling overdone. They were exactly the right fit for the vibe I was going for with this film. We'll also talk a little bit more about what it's actually like to shoot anamorphic on the ZR in a bit, because there are some things worth knowing here. And if you want to see the full rig breakdown for this shoot, make sure you're subscribed, because that video is coming soon. Alright, first and foremost, the image quality coming out of the Nikon ZR is genuinely impressive, especially when you consider the size of the camera and the price point. The image you get feels way above what you'd expect from something in this category. I can honestly say that it's one of the best looking images I've seen from a camera at this size and price. Somehow the ZR gives you this really nice balance between sharpness and detail without feeling overly digital. Now, all of this footage was shot in the R3D NE codec, which I personally think is the best choice on this camera in terms of image quality. And because of that beautiful red codec, everything coming out of the ZR is just really nice to grade as well. And by the way, all the images you'll see in this video are graded with my new Nikon ZR LUT pack, which I just released. And I'm soft launching this right now with an awesome discount that will be available for the next few weeks. The pack includes 5 creative film look LUTs and 5 Rec 709 base LUTs, and you can pick it up via the link down below if you're interested. Now, even if for whatever reason you might not want to shoot in the R3D NE codec, this camera still offers a bunch of other fantastic codecs. You've got 12-bit NRAW, 12-bit ProRes RAW, 10-bit ProRes 422, and 10-bit H.265. Unfortunately, the 10-bit H.265 in N-Log on this camera just isn't that good. Now, if you look at it on its own, you might think it's okay, but once you compare it to any of the other codecs on this camera, you'll start to see the issue with the H.265 codec pretty quickly. It looks very soft and there is no fine detail in the image. It just has a very mushy overall quality. The details in the eye, for example, are not as clear in some of the other codecs. Or if we zoom into the camera here, you can see there is a lot more texture with the other codecs, and it's almost as if in the H.265 there's some kind of noise reduction happening in the camera, which makes the whole image soft. Now, I would say if you're shooting for things like social media, so stuff that's only going to be viewed on a phone, for example, I guess the H.265 will be fine, but for other higher quality client work, I would personally avoid it at all costs. So why did I shoot everything in R3D NE, and why do I think it's probably the best codec on this camera, with a pretty huge caveat though? Well, there are a few reasons. The first one is pretty simple, it's skin tones. So right out of the gate, R3D NE just handles skin tones in a way that feels really natural and pleasing. The roll-offs are smooth, the transitions feel organic, and it just has that quality where you point the camera at someone's face and it just looks good, without a lot of work in post. The second reason is the highlight handling. So Red's IPP2 pipeline provides very smooth highlight roll-off and much better shadow detail compared to other codecs. and we'll look at some of the low light shots in a second, but basically if you're dealing with unpredictable lighting situations a lot, this IPP pipeline can be a big deal. Now, I do want to be fair here. Even though I think the R3D NE image out of this camera is absolutely stunning, there is one major issue with shooting in this codec, and that is data rates. So if you're seriously considering getting this camera specifically to shoot in R3D NE, this might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. A 1TB CF Express card will get you around 1 hour and 20 minutes of record time at 6K 25 FPS. That means if you're shooting a couple of hour-long interviews in a day, you're looking at least 3 1TB cards just to be safe. And now you haven't even shot any B-roll, a second interview camera, or you haven't even started backing up that data. For the documentary I shot, I ended up with around 3 TB of ZR footage from a 2-day shoot, plus footage from the B camera of the interview, which was another terabyte. After backing up all of that footage, it then comes down to a total of 8 TB of storage. Now imagine shooting multiple projects like this per month. You're looking at 30 to 50 TB of storage per month, or 400 to 600 TB per year. And look, I'm usually the first to say who cares about data, just get the best possible image. And that is of course a bit of the trade-off here. I mean, you get incredible image quality in Red RAW for those large files. And compared to other RAW formats like, for example, Blackmagic RAW, these are kind of the data rates to be expected. But what makes it a bit wild to me is the camera it's coming from. Something this small at this price point, aimed at filmmakers who probably aren't running large production company infrastructure. Anyway, I hope Nikon is able to give us a more compressed version of this R3D NE codec, although I am unsure if it's even possible with the hardware of this tiny camera. With all that said, that leaves us with NRAW, probably the second best option on the ZR. Now, to be honest, I've only shot a couple of basic comparison clips in NRAW on this camera, so I can't give you a deep dive on it, but what I can tell you is that it offers significantly more manageable data rates. I mean, you're getting around 2 hours of record time per terabyte in standard quality, so from a practical standpoint, it's a much easier codec to live with. The trade-off is of course that you're giving up the red color science, that IPP2 pipeline, those skin tones, that highlight handling, and for me personally, that's a trade-off I wasn't willing to make on this documentary shoot, and it's also something that kind of frustrates me on the ZR. I would only really want to own this camera to shoot R3D NE and not NRAW, but I can absolutely see why for a lot of people, NRAW might actually be the smarter choice on this camera. Okay, now let's talk a bit about the dynamic range on this camera. Now, I didn't do any super technical tests here. I just want to show you some real footage and what it actually looks like when you're working with certain dynamic range scenarios. Looking at some of these shots, what immediately stands out is just how much information is sitting in those highlights and shadows. When you're grading R3D NE especially, there's a lot of room to play with in these shots. You can pull a lot of those highlights back quite significantly before things start to fall apart. And if we look at a few shots here where the highlights are clipping, the roll-off there is really natural and nothing too harsh or digital looking. It doesn't look like a destroyed image or anything like that. And also in the shadows, you can see there's really a lot of information in these files to work with when you're color grading. The amazing part, of course, of working with RAW files is that you can also go into that raw data and play around with your ISO to fine-tune your exposure in post-production. Now, looking at the noise in the images of the ZR, I honestly think it does a great job. I've read some things where people thought it was terrible, but I honestly haven't seen any of that. One thing to keep in mind though is that if you are shooting R3D NE like I was, there isn't actually any internal noise reduction or image processing being applied in comparison to what you might get on a Sony FX3 or a Lumix S5 IIX, for example. And zooming into some of the footage here, it actually looks pretty clean overall. The noise that sometimes is there has a really nice film grain-like quality to it. It's uniform, it's not blotchy or anything, and it doesn't have any of that weird banding or fixed pattern noise like you sometimes see on other cameras. Especially when you're looking at the shots in the actual size, so not zoomed in so much, I think these shots look very clean. I've mostly been sticking to the two native ISOs, so 800 and 6400, because you can change the ISO in post anyway if you need to. And honestly, having that second native ISO of 6400 is pretty impressive for a camera at this price point. And I would argue that it's probably going to be plenty for most scenarios. Another thing that pleasantly surprised me on the Nikon ZR is its slow motion capabilities. For the documentary, I shot a few things at 50 FPS just to give myself some flexibility in the edit, and especially when the hammer is hitting the steel, it just adds a bit of that epicness to the whole thing. And as you can see, the footage looks great. It holds up really well, the image quality is consistent with what you're getting at 25 FPS, and it just works. Now you can actually shoot up to 60 FPS in full 6K with no crop, and if you switch to a Super 35 crop, you can even push that all the way up to 120 FPS. And all of that is in Red RAW, which again is really impressive for a camera at this price point. Looking at the image stabilization or IBIS on the Nikon ZR, my experience with it is a bit unusual. So for the documentary, I was shooting on series anamorphic manual cinema lenses, and to get the IBIS working with lenses like that on the ZR, you have to go into the menu and manually input your lens data, which I just didn't do. Mostly because I was worried that in-camera stabilization combined with anamorphics might cause some weird artifacts. So the entire documentary was shot handheld with zero in-camera stabilization, and for the shots where I felt it was needed, I just threw on some stabilization in DaVinci Resolve, which honestly worked perfectly fine. The Strasbourg footage was a bit of a different story though. Here I was using native Nikon autofocus lenses, so the IBIS just kicks in automatically. And for the kind of shooting I was doing, which were mostly fairly static handheld shots, it did its job well enough. Now let's look at one of the most talked about features on this camera, and that is that big beautiful screen. And for the Strasbourg city trip, it was genuinely fantastic. Shooting run and gun, just wandering around with the camera, having that large screen to compose and monitor your shot is a real luxury. Especially coming from any other camera brand, it's a significant upgrade, and it's one of those things where you then kind of want it on all of your cameras. But here's the thing, for the documentary I was shooting anamorphic, and the Nikon ZR does not have internal anamorphic de-squeeze. So that big beautiful screen essentially becomes useless, and you're actually forced to hook up an external monitor through a micro HDMI port no less. So at that stage you've kind of negated the whole point of having this screen in the first place. Besides anamorphic support being a serious missing feature on this camera, false color is also absent from the ZR, plus focus peaking doesn't work when shooting Red RAW with a LUT applied. And honestly, in 2026 on a camera that's branding itself as a cinema camera, these are features that should just be evident and not premium. Now, I will say that for bigger projects like this documentary, I personally would always prefer to have a bigger 7-inch monitor anyway, just to get the maximum real estate for viewing my image while I'm shooting. And while we're on the topic of frustrations, let's talk about a few other things that bugged me on the ZR, and then I'll go over some features that are actually really clever on this camera. So the menu system on this camera is really rough. The ZR has a pretty minimal design when it comes to buttons or dials, so you're having to use that big touchscreen for a lot of the navigation. However, the UI of this camera is not actually optimized for doing that. Now, I think this is an issue that pretty much every other camera manufacturer also suffers from. It seems like Blackmagic is really the only brand that has a super user-friendly UI with touchscreen control in mind, so I don't know why other brands aren't focusing on this as well. The CF Express memory card slot being in the battery compartment is another thing that's a little bit annoying, but it's not the worst thing, and it definitely bothered me less than I was expecting. Same goes for the micro HDMI. It's really not ideal, and I genuinely don't understand why they went that route for this camera, but if you're using a cage with an HDMI locking clamp, it's manageable. Now, I don't want to sound like it's all bad when it comes to the ZR. There are definitely some things on this camera that I think are genuinely brilliant and that I wish more manufacturers would include as a standard. That little zoom rocker, for example, is fantastic. It lets you punch in to quickly acquire focus when you're shooting on manual lenses, and it's just really fast and intuitive. And then there is 32-bit float audio, which on this documentary was actually an absolute lifesaver. I was filming a lot of loud machines and hammers hitting steel, so the audio was all over the place. And with that 32-bit float, I was able to go back in post and recover all of it. These high-range audio levels would have been completely blown out and unusable on any other camera. So that kind of flexibility in audio recording is something that until recently you'd only find on dedicated audio recorders, and having it built into a camera at this price point is genuinely impressive. So this is something that I would really love to see on other cameras as well. So after all that, is the Nikon ZR ready for professional work, and would I recommend this camera for example, this type of documentary work? Well, I guess the answer isn't quite that simple. The experience I had on this documentary shoot was that I did really enjoy shooting with this camera, and the images coming out of it were genuinely stunning and far beyond what you'd expect from a $2,000 tiny camera. But the ZR right now is definitely missing a few features that would make me want to 100% recommend this camera for any kind of professional work. For one-man productions, videographers, solo filmmakers, that bloated R3D NE data makes it genuinely expensive to run on a regular production schedule. And things like anamorphic support, false color, and focus peaking in red RAW need to be added for it to really fit that filmmaking camera tag. That being said, I can see this being a great affordable B camera or gimbal camera to anyone already having a larger red setup and wanting to stay in that red color science. And if you're a filmmaker who shoots bigger projects a few times a year where you want to have that amazing red codec, then the overall package of the Nikon ZR is pretty hard to argue with at this price point. Either way, Nikon has definitely created something interesting here. And I gotta say, even with some of the frustrations I have with this camera, I loved shooting with it. I found that it inspired me, and it really does produce beautiful images. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Is the Nikon ZR a camera you would consider, or if you already own one, what are your thoughts on it? Alright, that's it for this one. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!